At first glance, it doesn't seem like anything special. Just another old coin, brown, worn, and easy to overlook. But this particular year marks the end of an era, and that alone gives it a unique place in American coin history. The 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny was the final year this iconic wheatback design was ever produced. After nearly 50 years in circulation, the design would be replaced in 1959 with the Lincoln Memorial reverse. So every 1958 wheat penny you find is part of the closing chapter of a long-running design. That alone makes it meaningful to collectors. But as always in coin collecting, meaning and value are two very different things. In 1958, pennies were struck at two mints, Philadelphia and Denver. Philadelphia produced hundreds of millions of coins with no mint mark, while Denver struck a similarly large number marked with a small D below the date. Because of these high production numbers, most 1958 wheat pennies are extremely common. You can still find them today in old collections, coin rolls, and sometimes even in circulation. So where does the interest come from? It comes down to three things: condition, color, and one very important and very rare error. Let's start with condition. Most 1958 pennies you'll encounter are circulated. They've been used in everyday transactions, and it shows. The wheat stalks on the reverse may be partially worn down. Lincoln's cheek and jawline may appear smooth. The overall surface might be dull or dark. In this condition, the coin typically holds only a small premium over face value. But when you step into uncirculated grades, things begin to change. Coins that were never used in commerce, coins that retain their original surfaces, are graded on the mint state scale. Lower mint state coins may still show marks or lack strong visual appeal. But as you move higher, into grades like MS65 and above, you start to see coins with sharp details, strong luster, and fewer imperfections. And then there's color. Like all copper coins, 1958 pennies were originally bright red when struck. Over time, exposure to air causes that color to fade into brown. Collectors divide these coins into three categories: brown, red-brown, and red. Brown coins are the most common. Red-brown coins show a mix of original color and toning. But red coins, those that still display their original mint color, are the most desirable, especially in higher grades. A 1958 wheat penny in MS65 red condition is far more appealing to collectors than a worn brown example. But even with great condition and color, most 1958 pennies remain relatively accessible. Except for one. There is a specific error associated with this year that has become one of the most talked about Lincoln cent varieties ever discovered. The 1958 double die obverse. This is not a minor or questionable variety. It is a strong, dramatic doubling that appears clearly in the lettering on the front of the coin, especially in God We Trust and Liberty. The doubling is bold, unmistakable, and easy to see without magnification once you know what to look for. But here's the important part. Only a very small number of these coins are known to exist. This is not the kind of error you casually find in pocket change. It is extremely rare, well documented, and closely studied by collectors and experts. Because of its rarity and visual strength, it has become one of the key highlight coins in the entire Lincoln cent series. And that has led to one major issue: confusion. Many people believe they found this rare double die, when in reality, they're looking at something else. Often, what they're seeing is machine doubling, a much more common effect that occurs during the striking process. Machine doubling can create a flat, shelf-like appearance on letters, but it lacks the depth and separation of a true double die. Other times, it's simply damage or wear. That's why authentication is so important. A genuine 1958 double die obverse is not something you guess, it's something you verify, usually through a professional grading service. Outside of that rare variety, the rest of the 1958 wheat penny story comes back to quality. High-grade coins with strong luster and original red color are always in demand. Collectors building complete Lincoln cent sets often look for the best example they can afford for the final wheat year. And because it's the last year of the series, there's always a bit of extra attention placed on it. But the key idea remains the same. This is a common coin, until it isn't. A worn example may carry little more than historical interest. But a sharply struck, brilliantly preserved coin with full red color can stand out in a meaningful way. And in rare cases, with the right error, it can become something extraordinary. So if you ever come across a 1958 wheat penny, don't just glance at the date and move on. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Look at the color. Examine the lettering. Because while most are ordinary, a few are anything but. And sometimes, the difference between common and remarkable comes down to the smallest details. Take a look at the loose change around you. Maybe there's a penny sitting on your desk, in your car, or tucked away in a jar somewhere. Most people wouldn't think twice about it. But what if I told you that a simple 1-cent coin from 1941 could be worth far more than just a penny? Not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because of the tiny details most people overlook. The 1941 Lincoln wheat penny is one of those coins that hides its true story in plain sight. At first glance, it appears completely ordinary. Millions upon millions were produced. It circulated widely. It passed through countless hands during a time when the world itself was changing rapidly. But like many things in coin collecting, the real value isn't always obvious. The year 1941 sits at a fascinating moment in American history. The United States had not yet officially entered World War II, but tensions were rising. Industry was ramping up. Materials were becoming more important. And the US Mint was working at full capacity to keep up with economic demand. That year, the Lincoln wheat penny was struck in 3 different locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Together, these mints produced well over 1 billion pennies. That alone tells you something important: this is not a rare coin in terms of sheer numbers. And yet, collectors still pay close attention to it. Because numbers don't tell the whole story. To understand why, you have to look at the coin itself. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above him, the words "In God We Trust." To the left, Liberty. And to the right, the date, 1941. If the coin was minted in Denver or San Francisco, you'll see a small D Wart S just below the date. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the classic wheat design. 2 wheat stalks curve inward along the edges. In the center, the words 1 cent, and beneath that, United States of America. At the top, the Latin phrase E pluribus unum. This design had already been in use for over 3 decades by 1941, and it would continue until 1958. It's one of the most iconic coin designs ever produced in the United States. But design alone doesn't determine value. Condition is everything. Most 1941 pennies you'll encounter today are heavily worn. They've spent years, sometimes decades, in circulation. These coins show clear signs of use. The high points of the design are smooth. The details are faded. The surface may be dark or uneven. In this condition, the coin carries very little premium. It's common, and collectors have seen countless examples just like it. But when you move into higher grades, the story changes dramatically. Coins are graded on a standardized scale that measures their condition. For circulated coins, that scale ranges from heavily worn to lightly worn. But the real shift happens when a coin is considered uncirculated, meaning it shows no signs of wear from use. These coins fall into what's known as the mint state range. At the lower end, you might see coins with dull surfaces and noticeable marks. They're technically uncirculated, but they lack visual appeal. As the grade increases, so does the quality. In the mid-range, the coin begins to show stronger luster. The details are sharper. Fewer marks are visible. And at the higher end, grades like MS65 and MS66, you start to see something special. These coins have strong, vibrant luster. The surfaces are clean. The strike is sharp. They look almost as if they were just made, even after all these years. And that's where collector demand begins to rise. But there's another factor that plays a major role, especially with copper coins like the 1941 penny. Color. When a penny is first struck, it has a bright, reddish appearance. Over time, exposure to air and moisture causes the copper to darken. This is completely natural, and most older pennies eventually turn brown. Collectors recognize three primary color categories. Brown coins are fully toned, often dark and uniform in color. These are the most common. Red-brown coins fall somewhere in between. They retain some of their original red color, mixed with areas of brown toning. And then there are red coins. These are the ones that still display their original mint color, bright, vibrant, and eye-catching. Maintaining that red color over decades is incredibly difficult. It requires careful storage and a bit of luck. As a result, red coins are far more desirable, especially in higher grades. Now combine high grade with original red color, and you begin to understand why some 1941 pennies stand out from the rest. Even though the coin itself is common, examples in exceptional condition are not. And that's a key concept in coin collecting. Rarity isn't just about how many were made. It's about how many have survived in a particular condition. But beyond condition and color, there's another layer of interest: minting errors. These are not myths or exaggerated claims. They are real, documented occurrences that happen during the coin production process. And they can turn an ordinary coin into something far more intriguing. One of the most recognizable types is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned during striking. The result is a design that appears shifted, with part of it missing. The more dramatic the shift, the more noticeable the error becomes. Another type involves die cracks. As dies are used over time, they begin to wear down. Small cracks can form, and these cracks transfer onto the coins as raised lines. Some are subtle. Others are bold and easy to spot. In more advanced cases, a piece of the die can break off entirely. This creates what's known as a cud, a raised, blob-like area on the coin where metal flowed into the missing portion of the die. There are also lamination errors. These occur when the metal itself has internal flaws. Layers can separate or peel, creating a distinctive appearance on the coin's surface. These errors often look dramatic and are highly collectible when clearly visible. Struck-through errors are another category. In these cases, something, like grease or debris, gets between the die and the coin during striking. This prevents part of the design from forming properly, leaving a blank or distorted area. And while 1941 is not widely known for major double die varieties, minor doubling can still be found. This appears as slight duplication in letters or numbers, and it requires careful examination to identify correctly. But here's where caution is important. Not every unusual feature is a true mint error. Damage that occurs after the coin leaves the mint, scratches, dents, corrosion, can sometimes look similar. These forms of post-mint damage do not add value and can actually reduce it. Understanding the difference takes time and experience. And for higher value coins, professional grading can provide clarity and confidence. When it comes to market value, it's important to stay grounded. Most 1941 pennies are common. In circulated condition, they are widely available and typically carry only a modest premium. Even many uncirculated examples are accessible to collectors. But as condition improves, and especially when original red color is present, the coin becomes more desirable. At the highest levels of preservation, with strong eye appeal and minimal imperfections, these coins can command significantly higher interest. Error coins can also carry premiums, depending on the type and severity of the error. But the key takeaway is this: value is driven by quality, not hype. A common coin in exceptional condition will always attract more attention than a rare coin in poor condition. For collectors, the strategy is simple but effective. Focus on quality. Learn the details. Take the time to examine each coin carefully. Look for strong luster, clean surfaces, sharp details. Pay attention to color. And when it comes to errors, make sure they are genuine. Because in the world of coin collecting, knowledge is your greatest asset. So the next time you come across a 1941 penny, don't dismiss it. Hold it up to the light. Look closely. Because sometimes, the smallest details can make the biggest difference. And even a 1-cent coin can carry a story far more valuable than its face value. If I told you that a single penny, just 1 cent, could be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a Lamborghini, even over $1 million, would you check your pocket change right now? Because hidden among millions of ordinary coins is a legendary mistake from 1942 and 1943 that has turned everyday people into six-figure winners, and today, we're diving deep into the coin that could completely change your life. Picture this. It's 1943. The world is at war. Copper is desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. So the US Mint makes a drastic decision: stop using copper for pennies and switch to zinc-coated steel. Overnight, the familiar brown Lincoln cent becomes a shiny silver-gray coin. Billions are made. And most of them are basically worthless today. But here's where the story gets crazy. Somewhere inside the mint, something went wrong. A few leftover bronze planchets, those copper blanks from 1942, were accidentally left inside the machinery. And instead of being removed, they were struck with 1943 dyes and released into circulation. That tiny mistake created what many collectors call the holy grail of American coins: the 1943 copper penny. And if you find one, you're not looking at a penny anymore, you're looking at a six-figure or even seven-figure payday. Let's talk real numbers, because this isn't hype, this is documented history. One famous example, discovered by a teenager in his school cafeteria, sold decades later for over $200,000 at auction. And that's not even close to the highest. Other examples have sold for nearly $300,000, over $370,000, and in some cases, over $1 million depending on condition and mint mark. In fact, one of the rarest versions, the 1943 AD copper penny from the Denver Mint, is so scarce that only one confirmed example exists, and it has sold for around $1.7 million. Let that sink in. 1 penny. $1 million. Now here's the twist that makes this story even more exciting: most 1943 pennies are not valuable at all. In fact, the standard steel versions, those silver-looking coins, are incredibly common. Over 1 billion were minted, and most are worth just a few cents to a few dollars today. So why the massive difference? It all comes down to rarity, metal composition, and mistakes. The copper versions were never supposed to exist. Experts estimate fewer than 30 genuine examples are known today across all mints. That's why collectors chase them so aggressively, because finding one is like discovering buried treasure in plain sight. And here's where things get even more interesting for you as a collector or someone just getting into coins. You don't need to find $1 million copper penny to score big. There are other 1,943 varieties and errors that can still be worth serious money. Take the high-grade steel pennies, for example. While most are common, coins in near-perfect condition, graded MS67 or higher, can sell for hundreds, and a handful of coins that were never meant to exist. That's what makes it legendary. So here's the question you need to ask yourself right now. Have you actually checked your coins? Not just glanced at them, but really checked them? Because the difference between a common steel penny and a rare copper one isn't obvious at first glance. And that's exactly why these coins continue to be discovered. Somewhere out there, right now, someone has one of these coins and doesn't even know it. It could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, a coin roll from the bank, or even your own pocket change. And that's what makes coin collecting so powerful. You don't need to be rich to start. You don't need expensive equipment. All you need is curiosity and a little bit of knowledge. Because sometimes, the smallest details, like the color of a penny, can mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. So the next time you see a 1943 penny, don't ignore it. Pick it up. Test it. Look at it closely. Because you might just be holding one of the most valuable coins in American history. And if you are, your life might never be the same again.